Thank you everyone for joining. We will be starting in just a few minutes. Hello everyone. Welcome to the Florida Department of Economic Opportunities, DEO, Rebuild Florida General Infrastructure Repair Program Overview. My name is Shamikia Duval, and I'm on the Office of Disaster Recovery team at DEO. Today's presentation will provide an overview of the Rebuild Florida General Infrastructure Repair Program for Hurricane Michael impacted communities, including application requirements, scoring criteria, and next steps for the program. Our goals for today's webinar are to provide you with more information on the Rebuild Florida General Infrastructure Repair Program, explain the program objectives, and outline how your communities can apply for this funding. We will begin with a brief overview of the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery CDBG-DR funding. We will then discuss which communities are eligible for the funding and the guidelines and objectives of the Rebuild Florida General Infrastructure Repair Program. Following the explanation of those guidelines, I will review the application process and scoring criteria that will be utilized to evaluate submitted applications. Then we will discuss opportunities for how you can receive further technical assistance from the DEO team. After that, we will take a few minutes to answer questions. As your questions arise, please type them in the question box. As a point of information, all webinar materials will be made available on the program's website. And with that said, let's get started. DEO is the primary state partner of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. We administer many HUD grant programs, which include Community Development Block Grants. The Office of Disaster Recovery is a branch within DEO that oversees CDBG-DR funding for Hurricanes Hermine, Matthew, Irma, and Michael, as well as the CDBG Mitigation Program. Rebuild Florida is a program of DEO created with federally funding to help Florida's long-term recovery efforts from the devastating impacts of recent storms. The CDBG-DR allocation for Hurricane Michael totals $735 million. As we are all well aware, Hurricane Michael made landfall in the Florida Panhandle in October of 2018. In May of 2019, HUD announced $448 million in CDBG-DR funding, followed by an additional $287 million in December of that year. On January 2nd, 2020, HUD published the Federal Register necessary for the state of Florida to develop its federally required action plan to access the funding. In February of this year, DEO hosted several public outreach meetings throughout Hurricane Michael impacted communities and hosted a webinar to seek feedback on development of the state action plan. In March, DEO posted an initial draft of the state action plan for public comment and submitted the state action plan to HUD on May 14, 2020, months ahead of schedule. The state action plan was approved by HUD on June 26, 2020, and DEO announced the launch of the Rebuild Florida Voluntary Home Buyout Program on August 17, and launched the Rebuild Florida General Infrastructure Repair Program on September 2nd. HUD designated Bay, Calhoun, Franklin, Gaston, Gulf, Jackson, Liberty, Wakulla, and Washington counties as most impacted in distressed mid-areas. The state of Florida then designated an additional 3 counties, Holmes, Leon, and Taylor, as the remaining mid-areas. According to the guidelines set by the Federally Register, at least 80% of the allocated funds must be spent in HUD designated mid-areas, shown in the green on the map. The remaining funding can be spent in state designated mid-areas, shown in blue on the map. DEO will use the allocated funding to launch 5 disaster recovery programs in the HUD and state designated mid-areas. The Rebuild Florida General Infrastructure Repair Program, which launched on September 2nd, 2020, is designed to fund infrastructure restoration and improvement projects in communities impacted by Hurricane Michael. The Rebuild Florida Hometown Revitalization Program will support the recovery of economic activity in commercial areas of impacted towns and cities, facilitating the return and recovery of businesses, jobs, and provision of goods and services to the community. The Rebuild Florida Workforce Recovery Training Program will provide funding opportunities for local workforce development boards, educational institutions, and technical centers located in the communities most impacted by Hurricane Michael to train new workers in construction trades. The Rebuild Florida Housing Repair and Replacement Program will repair, replace, or reconstruct homes damaged by Hurricane Michael. The Rebuild Florida Voluntary Home Buyout Program, which launched on August 17, 2020, is designed to encourage risk reduction through the purchase of residential property in high flood risk areas to help reduce the impact of future disasters. Local governments that are within the federal and state designated mid areas are eligible to apply for funding. As we previously stated, the Rebuild Florida General Infrastructure Repair Program application cycle opened on September 2nd, and the deadline to submit an application is November 30th, 2020. The program has an allocation of just over $223 million, which will be awarded to two competitive application phases. The first application cycle provides just over $111 million in available funding, with the minimum award amount being $250,000. DEO will use a subrecipient model to administer the grant funds to eligible applicants. Those who are eligible to apply for this funding include state agencies, counties, and municipalities. Additionally, school districts, nonprofit, and not-for-profit organizations and non-governmental organizations may partner with a state agency, county, or municipality as a co-applicant. However, DEO will maintain one subrecipient agreement with the eligible applicant. Projects must benefit HUD and state designated mid areas and HUD's national objectives of benefiting low and moderate income LMI persons and or urgent needs must be accounted for in all project proposals. There is no local match requirement for the Rebuild Florida General Infrastructure Repair Program. To submit project service area LMI information, the applicant can either supply DEO with the service area census blocks from the 2010 census or can conduct an area survey of the service area. Updated survey information may be especially beneficial to a project if the service area demographics and population change significantly due to Hurricane Michael. Please follow all applicable HUD CPD guidance when conducting and submitting a survey to DEO for LMI information. There are separate sections in the online application to select for applicants to submit either their survey data with attachments or census block data and block numbers, depending on the method that works best for your service area. We will be posting a DEO template household income certification form that you are able to use when conducting your survey. And we will be happy to assist applicants in determining which method may work best for them and schedule technical assistant meetings available. To be eligible for consideration of funding, projects must align with CDBG DR requirements and priorities as outlined in the action plan and the Federal Register, including but not limited to those below. Projects must demonstrate tieback to Hurricane Michael. Projects must primarily serve LMI populations. Projects for infrastructure must support LMI housing or urgent need. Projects must not contain a duplication of benefits, DOB. Applicants must also provide a detailed description of damage caused by Hurricane Michael. Examples of eligible activities under the Rebuild Florida General Infrastructure Repair Program include restoration of infrastructure damaged by Hurricane Michael, such as water and sewer facilities, streets, provision of generators, removal of debris, drainage, and bridges. Repair to public facilities, such as emergency community shelters, demolition, rehabilitation of publicly or privately owned commercial or industrial buildings, repair of homeless shelters and disaster shelter facilities, renourishment of dunes and/or dune restoration, economic revitalization, which includes any CD, BG, DR eligible activity that demonstrably restores and improves some aspect of the local economy. DEO will apply a two-phase process to review applications. First, proposals must pass HUD, CD, BG, DR threshold compliance criteria. Second, DEO will review and score each proposal based on scoring criteria, as seen here. If a proposal does not meet any of the threshold criteria, DEO cannot proceed to score it for funding consideration. Threshold compliance criteria include benefit to LMI individuals and benefit to LMI areas. Projects or programs must also address a clear unmet need, be tied to Hurricane Michael, and primarily serve housing activities. Once a proposal is determined to satisfy CD, BG, DR's threshold compliance criteria, then DEO will apply scoring based on the following scoring criteria for a maximum of 125 points. Overall LMI benefit. The LMI score will be determined based on the service area the project serves. The applicant should provide their LMI data for the project service area in a percentage form. For example, if the service area LMI is 65%, DEO will multiply by 30 the maximum amount of points to receive the final LMI score of 19.5 points. Stormwater infrastructure. This includes all stormwater, potable water, drainage, and wastewater projects. Evacuation routes can also earn up to 5 points. Project impact. The impact of the project on the community should be significant with an emphasis on health and safety, including but not limited to economic impact, such as businesses involved in design, engineering, and construction, creation of jobs, savings on economic losses attributable to service interruptions, such as industries dependent on clean water and waterways, and community resilience. On a scale of 0 to 20, 0 points should be awarded to projects with little to no impact, and up to 20 points can be awarded to projects that have a significant economic or health, safety, community impact. Homeless shelter and facilities serving as shelters during disasters. An applicant can score a maximum of 15 points if the project either improves or repairs an existing homeless shelter or facility that also functions as a disaster shelter for the community. Management capacity. The local entity has the capacity to complete the project and the ability to perform required maintenance. Special designation. An applicant can score a maximum of 10 points if the project is located in a rural economic development initiative, eligible county or community, 5 points. Is located in an area or state critical concern, 5 points. Leverage of funds. CD, BG, DR funds used as federal program local match, 5 points. CD, BG, DR funds used along with leverage funds from the applicant, 5 points. Project readiness. Planning is complete and the project is ready to break ground after the completion of a required HUD complaint environments review or assessment and funds are available, 10 points. Initial planning has been completed and the procurement process is ready to begin. 5 points. We will conclude by discussing the process for receiving technical assistance. DEO will provide one-on-one technical assistance, TA calls, to general infrastructure repair program applicants. You may reserve a time for one-on-one TA by clicking the Pick Time link provided on the slide. Please be sure to email your questions in advance to cdbg-dr infrastructure@deo.myflorida.com. We will now take some time to answer questions that you may have. You may submit questions by typing them in the question box. I am joined by Gina Herron and Joseph Oglesby from DEO's Office of Disaster Recovery to assist in answering questions. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. We're glad to have you here. We're looking forward to answering a few of your questions as they come in. If we have some very specific questions, we'll probably answer those one-on-one with the people that ask them. We're going to try to answer the general questions that are going to benefit everyone. So again, thank you for your participation, and we will go ahead and get started.
Okay, so the first question we have is, will the slide deck be provided following the webinar? And yes, it will be.
So we have a question about leveraging of funding and using funds as match. So the most important thing that I'll mention before I answer the question is, remember, there are no match funds required to be able to participate in this program. You may leverage funds to use as a match. However, it is not required. If you have funding sources from FEMA, USDA, other programs that you've been eligible for, we can help match those programs with our funding. If you have another source of funding that you are questioning if it could be used, or if we could use our funds to match those, please give us the specifics. That way we could make sure we give you a good solid answer. So we have a question about projects outside a low to moderate income area. Remember, we have another national objective of urgent need. So if the project does fall into the category of urgent need, that is also a valid national objective to be able to use outside of LMI. Please remember that for today's question and answer, this is strictly for the infrastructure program. Other materials and information for the other program areas will be made available when those programs are ready. So we will stick to answering questions about the infrastructure program. We are getting several questions about the funding being made available for the HMGP Match Program. We are working on this program. Details on that will be available soon. But please remember, as we continue to get questions about housing and other program areas, let's please just stick with questions about our infrastructure program. We have a really good question about the length of the program. The length of the program is 2 years with a possible 12-month extension. So as we're working through you with your projects, if you are awarded, we can definitely work with you if you think you're going to fall outside that window. But right now, like we said, 2 year with a possible extension of 12 months. And one thing that we have noticed from a lot of the communities that haven't participated in the past with maybe a small city's regular CDBG is the fact that they're either they haven't had the matching funds or they haven't scored well on those before. Please do not let that hinder you in applying for these funds. You can see that the scoring is different. The qualifications for applying are different. So please don't let that hinder you from trying to apply for these funds, because they are 2 different programs. We've got a question about the number of projects that you can apply for. So there is a cap on the number of projects you can apply for. Right now it's 5 projects, but please do remember there will be 2 rounds of funding. So you will have an opportunity to apply again in the second round of funding when it does roll out. I do not have a timeline to be able to give you with that right now, but yes, 5 applications per and the additional round of funding when it does come available. We've got a question about, does each project require an application? Yes, so each you will need an application link for each of those projects. So we have a really good question. If your application for the first round is not accepted, would we offer suggestions, edits, if you wanted to submit it in the second round? Yes, if that's something that you would like to pursue after we move through and get go through the application cycle, and we're actually awarding and working on subrecipient agreements after that, we'd be more than happy to discuss those applications with you in order for you to strengthen it for the a potential second round application. So we've had another really good question about projects. This one in particularly about a water system. Let's say you've got a water system that maybe needs several of the lift stations repaired. We're going to look at that as one project. not as multiple projects, as long as they're on the same system. We're not going to be able to look at a drinking water system and a wastewater system as the same project. But if you do have multiple areas of need within the same system, we can look at that as one project. We've got another question about buildings for the general conduct of government. We appreciate that question. That's really good. So if you're wanting to apply for funding for your city hall, your county courthouse, something like that, that would not be eligible. We can look at funding for fire stations, police stations, and things like that. But any building where you have, say, your general council meetings, commission meetings, your clerks, things like that, those buildings are not eligible as HUD will not allow. We have someone asking about is there a sample application available? You can go online and request a link, and the application will be provided to you. We have a question about the maximum award. In this, there is a minimum. However, there is no maximum award. If you have a project that is very large, you may apply for it. So there is no maximum. If you are a small community and you're worried about maybe having the bandwidth or capacity to work through the application process, please reach out to us. If you have a project that may be close to the minimum funding amount, please contact us. We want to work through that with you. There's asking, we have a question about the points breakdown for the application scoring. That is available on our website. We have a question about the threshold compliance. So in order to be eligible, you have to be in one of the HUD or state designated counties. Your project must have a damage tieback to Hurricane Michael, and we must meet a national objective, whether that's LMI or urgent need. So those are the threshold criteria for any of the projects. To be eligible, they must meet those criteria. We have a question about can funding be used for the acquisition of property? Yes, in some cases that is eligible. We would need to get specifics of what exactly the community was going to want to do with the property, but that is definitely a conversation that we would need to have with the actual specifics. So we have a question about the 2-year deadline. Someone's asking if that's within the state or if that's a HUD regulation. So from the time that we signed the grant agreement with HUD, we have 6 years to spend the funds and close out. So from the development of the program, as you work through your design, you're going to need time in order to design, build, and close out. So the reason we give the 36-month window is for us to have the proper amount of time to get you designed, constructed, and closed out. That way there is still time on DEO's end at the end of the process to make sure everything is closed up for HUD. We have a question about the allocation of being 223 million. Why we're not seeing all of that at one time. The reason that there are 2 rounds of this funding is to give communities a chance to have additional time to maybe prepare what project they want to apply for. Some communities may not be ready to move forward with a project. So this does give everyone two rounds in order to be prepared to submit a project. So we've got a question. I know in a lot of places there are multiple uses in buildings that are owned by the government. Let's say you've got a city hall where a portion of the building is also used as your police department. In that case, we can look at the project and maybe prorate funding. If you're having to repair, say, the whole building, there is an opportunity for us to pay based on the prorated share of the size of the police department. So I know that's probably going to occur in several of your communities. So if your police station is also housed in your city hall, there is an opportunity for us to give you some funding for that. I'm sorry, I think we may have misspoken earlier. The deadline for for submitting your application is November the 30th by 5 p.m. Eastern time. So please make sure for those of you that are in the Central Time Zone, please make sure you have those submitted to us by 4 o'clock local time. So we're having some questions about project readiness. If you've got, when you give us your project description and you were telling us about maybe how ready you are to proceed, please give us as much detail as you have. That way we will know how to award those points according to the detail that you provide. So I know there is a limit on the number of words, but however, when you're describing this project to us, please give us as much detail as you possibly can. We're having a few questions about road repair. Yes, road repair is an eligible activity for this program. We've got a really good question from someone about the repair of damage and also including mitigation while you're doing that. That is a fantastic question. Thank you for posing it. So yes, as you are rebuilding, repairing, let's say a fire station roof was destroyed and we're going to help fund the roof repair. Yes, we want to make sure that as that roof is repaired, that we invest in mitigating, making sure that the wind rating on the roof is high, that all the steps that can be made about additional strapping and things like that are included. So you can definitely include that in your cost estimate and in your project description. Yes, we would love to hear how you are also going to mitigate against future damage. So we've got a question about a county's EOC. So we can help repair an EOC. However, we cannot build an EOC. I know that has been a question in several different areas. If your EOC was damaged, we can help you repair it and also harden as we do the repairs, but we cannot build an EOC. We have a question about sheltering, if we're wanting to use particular buildings as shelters. One in particularly is addressed towards an animal shelter. I would say that if the shelter is primarily for people and there maybe is an area for the animal to also shelter, we would probably be able to look at that project. However, an animal shelter on its own is probably, you can apply. However, it's probably not going to score very well just due to the fact that we are looking at facilities that have more of a human impact, even though our four-legged friends are important. So we've got a question about, can we build a community center if we lost one? So if your community center was damaged beyond repair and the new one does need to be constructed, we would be able to work with you on that. However, if there was no community center there and you just wanted to build one using these funds, that would not be eligible. We have a question about demolition of some derelict buildings. We would probably want to have more of a one-on-one conversation and get some specific information about those buildings. Were those buildings in bad repair before the storm and Michael just made things worse? We'd probably also want to understand what the community would like to do with the property afterwards. We are going to have a revitalization program that may also be able to help in some areas like that. If there is a building that, it's not too far gone. So that would probably be good to really have some one-on-one conversations just to get more information. We've got a really good question on what are some good ways to be able to prove that the damage did occur during Hurricane Michael. So photos are always great. If you have photos of before and after your facility, that's a great way to show us that the damage was tied back to the storm. You can also work with us on your FEMA damage assessments. You can also provide, maybe it's a building in your community that was listed in the newspaper. You know, it talked about the disaster's impact on that particular building or park, things like that. We can definitely use that to be able to help tie the damage to the storm. So we've had quite a few questions regarding COVID come through. So there are separate funding sources available for COVID. However, our funds, we have been told by HUD that we are still, everything has to be tied to damage from Hurricane Michael. We cannot we cannot work on anything that is COVID related. We have a question about maybe some damage repair to, say, marinas, seawalls, things like that. So that could be an eligible project. We would really need to look at it from an LMI perspective. You know, is it in an area that is going to serve the LMI community? You know, obviously it could be an urgent need. Is it something that, you know, is it a park that serves the community? You know, there are different ways that we can look at it, but yes, that could be an eligible project. We had a really good question about the number of applications. So remember, you're limited to 5 applications for this round. That does not mean that you cannot apply in the second round of funding, or you can't apply in other program areas. When we say there's a 5 application limit, we are speaking specifically about Michael Infrastructure Round 1 only. So I hope we cleared that up. We want to make sure that you know, different communities apply for any program that they're interested in. So this only limits it to 5 for Michael Infrastructure Round 1. So we've got another question about sheltering specifically for first responders. That is something that's come up in the past. We would have to speak to HUD and get a little technical assistance ourselves on it. Usually when we're funding a project, it needs to be basically for the general public. And so if we're limiting the shelter specifically to first responders, I'm not sure what HUD's consideration of that would be. You know, if it were where first responders and the general public were housed in a shelter, that would probably make it go farther in the eyes of HUD. But we would have to really get into some specifics. I would really think it would need to be for the general public, though. We've got a really good question. Can you replace a damaged fire station or police station damaged by Hurricane Michael? So if the damage was so significant that it was not, it was cost prohibitive to repair the police or fire station, then yes, that is something that could be eligible. And it asked if we could put it in a different location, maybe that maybe higher elevation, things like that, that's definitely something that we would be happy to talk with you about. But it could be eligible, yes. As we're mitigating against future hazard, if there is an opportunity for that fire or police station to be moved to a safer area, we definitely want to hear about that and get that information and take that into account. So we've got another question about, building something new. Please remember that, new construction is not something that we're able to do unless we're replacing a facility that was either destroyed or so heavily impacted by Michael where it was not, it was cost prohibitive to rebuild. So if your community won't say new, community, let's say just a community building where you host events and things like that. If you didn't have one before and it wasn't damaged to the point where it has to be rebuilt, that's not something that we're going to be able to do. But we are more than happy to look at your community buildings that serve several capacities, whether it's, after school care, maybe somewhere where your elderly go and socialize or have their meals, things like that we can definitely help with. But just to build something new from scratch that wasn't there pre-Michael, that's not something that we're going to be able to help with. We really appreciate all the good questions that we've gotten. Some of the questions that we've received we'll have to look into a little bit more. But y'all ask a lot of very important and very good questions today. We really appreciate your attendance and all the feedback that you've provided with us. We're going to share the information again so you can have your one-on-one technical assistance. We'll share that as we wind down. But I do want to just to remind everyone, as you do fill out your application, please provide as much detail as possible in your descriptions as well as in your budgets. That is something that I really want to stress. And if you've applied for grants before from different agencies and you've not been successful, please don't let that hinder you from applying for this program or any of our other Hurricane Michael programs. If you do have questions, please submit those ahead of time for your one-on-one where our team can gather the correct information to provide for you. And we also want to make sure that everyone out there, as you are applying, please make sure that you've got your 5 best projects that you want to submit. We look forward to talking with you more later on. This is not the only opportunity to gather this information. If you do have questions, use the one-on-one. You can email us, give us a call, and we're happy to provide additional information. So with that, we will get the information to you one more time for the pick list on how to do that. So we've got the information now, but please remember that we will also send you an email for you to register as well. So you can email us at cdbg-infrastructure@deo.myflorida.com. We realize that's very long, so we will be emailing it to you. We really appreciate your attending with us today. We look forward to answering additional questions you may have as we work with you on your project. So on behalf of the infrastructure team, thank you, and we look forward to more conversations with you.